Wind cutting like knives through a ruined gas station, a blue scarf in a child's fist. So who locked Maddie out here to freeze? The wind screamed across the empty plains, shaking loose the last shards of glass from the gas station's windows. Officer Ryan Adler shoved the door open with his shoulder, his breath a white cloud in the 20-degree air. His flashlight beam skimmed over shelves stripped bare, oil cans frozen in their racks, and then caught on movement. A girl, small, maybe 8. She was curled behind the counter, wrapped in a torn coat, holding a blue knit scarf stiff with ice. Her lips were purple, but her eyes were open, watchful, like a cornered animal. "Hey," Ryan said softly, lowering himself to one knee. "You're safe now. Name's Ryan. I'm with the police." She flinched when he reached for the scarf, so he kept his hand still. The embroidery on it caught the beam. Maddie. "Is that your name?" he asked. The girl didn't answer, only pressed the scarf to her mouth as if it could hold in the warmth she was losing. Ryan stripped off his gloves and wrapped his hands around hers. Her fingers were like ice chips. "Let's get you out of here," he murmured. "Hang on, kid." Outside, the cruiser's heater groaned to life. Ryan glanced in the rearview mirror as he radioed dispatch. "Found a minor, female, approximately 8. Possible frostbite. Location, Old Sinclair on Route 83. The dispatcher's voice cracked through static. "Copy that, Adler. EMT's en route. Keep her warm if you can." He turned back. The girl stared out the window at the storm, the scarf clutched tight. Her lips moved once, but no sound came out. At Prairie Children's Ward, Dr. Morales met them at the doors. "Early frost nip," she said, examining the girl's hands. "No necrosis yet. She's lucky." Ryan nodded, but his mind snagged on how an 8-year-old ended up miles from town. He'd seen abandonment before, but this felt deliberate. The nurse offered the girl a hot cocoa. She hesitated, then took it, the steam fogging her lashes. Her voice was a whisper when it came. "Maddie." Ryan froze. "That's your name?" She nodded once. "Where are your parents, Maddie?" The girl's eyes darted to the hallway door as it hissed shut. The rolling metal reminded her of something. She shrank back, trembling. "It's okay," the nurse said, setting the cup down. "You're safe here." But Ryan saw the look, the kind born from memory, not fear of strangers. She'd been locked in somewhere. He'd bet his badge on it. Later, when he stepped out to file the report, the nurse called after him. She had this. The scarf was still damp, but heavier than before. Ryan turned it over and found something stitched beneath the name. Carter. He frowned. "Last name?" "Maybe," the nurse said. "Or maybe someone she loved." Ryan tucked it carefully into an evidence bag. "We'll find out." In the quiet of the hallway, a janitor's mop clinked against a vent. A faint metallic echo rang deeper than it should have. Maddie's head snapped toward it, eyes wide. "Don't open it," she whispered. Ryan crouched. "Why not?" Her hands shook as she lifted her cocoa. "That's where he hides things." "Who? Maddie?" She looked away. "The man from the garage." Ryan felt the chill crawl back through his bones. That vent wasn't just an air duct, it was a clue. When maintenance pried it open, a tiny black object slid out, clattering onto the tile. An SD card. Next to it, folded fuel invoices, addresses scribbled to a remote grain farm 40 miles east. Ryan exchanged a look with Dr. Morales. "Someone wanted this buried." The doctor nodded grimly. "You think she was hiding evidence?" Ryan slipped the SD card into a plastic sleeve. "No," he said quietly. "I think her mother was." Ryan sat at his desk long after his shift had ended, the evidence bag glinting under the weak fluorescent light. The blue scarf lay beside the SD card, its frayed edge stiff and salt-stained. He ran a thumb over the embroidery. Maddie Carter. The name tugged at something in his memory. Carter. There'd been a local case 2 years ago, a woman named Joanna Carter, civil engineer. She'd filed a lawsuit against a roadworks contractor for falsifying invoices and cutting corners on safety codes. Then she'd vanished. Her car found abandoned near the Missouri River Bridge, her case quietly shelved. Ryan opened his laptop and entered the case number. Red letters flashed. Closed. Insufficient evidence. He exhaled through his teeth. Yeah, right. The girl's SD card was encrypted, but not professionally. A local detective could run decryption through the department's digital forensics unit. He picked up the phone. "Adler, what's so urgent you're still here at 1 a.m.?" came the weary voice of Detective Carlin Gwynn. "Need you to check a card. Possible link to the Carter disappearance." There was silence. Then, "That case? You think it's connected to a kid?" "I don't think," Ryan said. "I know." By morning, the lab had cracked the files, the screen filled with invoices, fuel deliveries to a grain farm registered under Ames Construction Subsidiary Holdings. Each one paid in cash, each signature identical. Carla whistled low. Victor Ames. Guy's practically untouchable. Contracts with half the county. How's a kid involved? Ryan showed her the scarf. "She's Joanna Carter's daughter, Maddie." Carla blinked. "The mother's case files disappeared with her. You're telling me—" "She hid them in a vent," Ryan finished. That afternoon, Ryan returned to the hospital. Maddie was in a pediatric room with cartoon wallpaper and 2 bright lights. She sat near the window, tracing frost on the glass. "Hey, Maddie." He kept his voice soft. "Remember me?" Her eyes flicked toward him, uncertain but calmer than before. The scarf was freshly washed, folded on her lap. "I need your help," he said. "Do you remember the farm?" She hesitated. "It smelled like gas and hay." "That's good. Anything else?" "There was a dog, but they heard him when he barked." Her voice cracked. Ryan crouched beside her. "Did you see your mom there?" Tears welled, but she shook her head. "She told me to hide when the man came. She said, 'Don't make a sound, Maddie.' So I didn't." Ryan swallowed hard. "You did the right thing." Later, in the staff lounge, Nurse Lucy Hart poured herself coffee and glanced at him. "You're digging into Ames, aren't you?" Ryan frowned. "You know him?" She gave a bitter laugh. "Used to work for him. Accounting department. I left when I realized half his numbers were fiction." "You kept any proof?" Ryan asked. Her gaze slid to the door, then back. "Maybe. I wasn't brave enough to hand it over then. But that little girl, she deserves someone to be." She retrieved a thumb drive from her locker and handed it to him. "Double books, fake invoices, payments to inspectors. It's all there. And the emails. He threatened anyone who questioned him." Ryan looked at the drive, then at her. "You know this makes you a target." "I already was." She smiled tightly. "But I've got a mother in Minot and a conscience that won't shut up." By evening, Ryan's report hit the district attorney's desk. Within hours, state troopers and child services were looped in. The pattern was clear. Ames used his remote grain farm as a holding site, temporary, hidden, meant to pressure or silence whistleblowers and their families. Ryan drove back to the hospital. Maddie was asleep, her small hand clutching the scarf like a lifeline. Lucy adjusted the blanket over her shoulders. "She's stronger than she looks," Lucy murmured. "Yeah," Ryan said. His jaw tightened. "But she shouldn't have to be." Outside, wind howled against the windows. Ryan glanced at the reflection, his face drawn, eyes red from sleeplessness. "Tomorrow," he said under his breath, "we go to that farm." Lucy's voice was barely audible. "Then we better bring light." He looked at her, not sure if she meant flashlights or something else. But the next morning, when the snow lifted and the sky cleared to a brittle blue, Ryan's cruiser rolled out of the hospital lot. On the seat beside him lay the scarf and a printout of fuel invoices, coordinates pointing to the edge of Stark County, near a place no one ever visited. A silence settled heavy in the car. The kind that came before the truth was finally unearthed. The road to the farm was a narrow scar through the prairie, half buried under snowdrifts. Ryan's tires slipped twice before catching the gravel again. The heater groaned, fighting the 20-degree wind. He gripped the wheel tighter, scanning the horizon. Just frozen fields, rusted windmills, and that endless gray sky that made everything look abandoned. Beside him, Detective Carlin Guyen squinted at the map. "Coordinates say it's 2 miles ahead. You sure about this? No warrant yet." "Probable cause," Ryan said. "Kid's testimony, invoices, hidden files. If Ames has anything out here, I'm not waiting for permission to watch him burn evidence." Carla exhaled a thin line of frost. "You always did have a problem with patience." Ryan didn't argue. Patience was what had buried too many cases like Joanna Carter's. When they crested a hill, the farm came into view. Rows of empty grain silos, a corrugated shed, and one battered farmhouse with a half-collapsed porch. No vehicles, no movement. Carla grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, we're on site at the Stark property off County Road 214. Request backup." Static. Then, "Copy that. Units en route, ETA 20 minutes." Ryan stepped out. The snow reached his shins, biting through his uniform. The air smelled faintly of diesel and rust. He drew his flashlight and moved toward the shed. A padlock hung loose on the door, half melted by bolt cutters. Someone had been here recently. Inside, dust and cold air swirled around rows of empty fuel drums. But at the back, beneath a tarp, something metallic glinted. Ryan lifted it carefully. A rolling door. Small, heavy, like one used on a storage unit. He froze. Maddie's fear flashed back, the sound of metal rolling shut. "Carla," he called quietly. "Back here." She crouched beside him. "Looks like an old root cellar." Ryan pulled the latch. The door groaned open. Cold, stale air hit them, mixed with something else, the sharp tang of gasoline. They descended a short flight of concrete steps into a low room lined with shelves. Empty jerry cans, rags, and on one wall, a single cot, child-sized. Carla swallowed. "Oh, Jesus." Ryan found a folded blanket on the cot, stiff with frost. Beneath it lay a photograph, Joanna Carter holding Maddie at what looked like a county fair. "Taken last summer," he muttered. "She's been alive this long." "Or was," Carla said softly. Ryan pocketed the photo. "We're finding out." They turned at the sound of tires crunching outside. A black truck rolled into the yard, its engine low and deliberate. Ryan drew his weapon, motioning Carla to the window slit. Victor Ames stepped out, coat collar high, expression calm as stone. He wasn't surprised to see the cruiser. "Well," he said, voice carrying across the cold. "You're trespassing, Officer Adler." Ryan climbed out of the cellar, keeping the gun low. "Funny place for a construction contractor to spend his Saturday." Ames smiled thinly. "Checking fuel inventory." "Nothing illegal about that." Carla emerged behind him, badge visible. "Then you won't mind us taking a look inside your truck?" Ames's eyes flicked toward the cab. Too quick. Ryan moved first, yanking the passenger door open. Inside, sealed envelopes, each stamped county infrastructure payment. And on the seat, another scarf. Red this time. Child-sized. His pulse kicked. Where did this come from? Ames shrugged. "Donations? Winter drive." Ryan stepped closer. "You lie like a man who's paid to forget what it costs." The sound of sirens approached, faint at first, then building. Ames's jaw flexed. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Ryan said, "but it's one I can live with." When the troopers arrived, they swept the property, documenting everything. Beneath a trapdoor in the barn, they found old storage crates, one containing medical files with Joanna Carter's name, stamped confidential. Ryan stood outside the barn as the evidence team cataloged the items. Carla joined him, rubbing her hands against the cold. "This is big, Ryan. Fraud, kidnapping, obstruction. He'll lawyer up fast." Ryan nodded. "Then we need someone who can outthink him." Carla frowned. "Who?" He glanced toward the hospital's direction, though it was miles away. "Lucy Hart." She used to balance his books. Later that night, Lucy met them at the precinct with a binder. He paid off 2 inspectors and a county clerk. I have the wire logs. He used the grain farm as a ghost subsidiary to bury stolen funds. Carla flipped through the pages. These match the SD card invoices. That's enough for a raid warrant. Ryan leaned back. We're not just raiding, we're rescuing. Lucy hesitated. You think more kids? He didn't let her finish. We go tomorrow at dawn. That night, Ryan drove home through the blizzard. The blue scarf lay on his passenger seat again. Frayed, but warmer now. He reached over, touched the fabric. Hang on, Maddie, he murmured. We're almost there. Outside his windshield, the first streak of dawn bled into the sky, cold, thin, and silver as the edge of a promise. The morning broke hard and white, the kind of North Dakota cold that made even the air feel sharp. Ryan poured black coffee into a thermos, his fingers still raw from the night before. The warrant had come through at 6:15 a.m., signed by Judge Keller, expedited under child endangerment protocol. By 7, 4 patrol SUVs and 2 state trooper units idled outside the station, engines steaming in the sub-zero dawn. Detective Carla Nguyen checked her gear beside him, her breath clouding the air. We get in, we secure the property, we find whatever he's hiding. Fast. Ryan nodded, tugging his coat collar higher. Lucy's meeting us there with the DA's rep. She says she can identify the internal records. Carla glanced at him. You trust her? He didn't hesitate. With this, yeah. They rolled out in convoy, tires biting through drifts as the prairie opened wide and silent. The landscape looked endless, miles of white fields under a sky washed in silver. Ryan couldn't shake the image of the small cot in the cellar, the blue scarf folded on his dashboard. By the time they reached the Ames farm, the sun was a pale disk behind haze. The buildings loomed gray and still. Lucy's Subaru sat parked near the gate. She stepped out, her face red from the cold, but her eyes steady. They moved equipment, she said. I can tell. That barn used to hold drums. Now it's empty. Ryan glanced toward the troopers. Let's move. They breached the farmhouse first. The air inside was thick with diesel fumes and stale smoke. In the living room, stacks of binders lined the floor. Contracts, invoices, ledgers, all neatly arranged as if Ames had expected visitors. Looks staged, Carla muttered. Lucy leafed through one binder, her brows tightening. These are clean copies, not the real ones. Ryan's gut twisted. Then where are the originals? A metallic clang echoed from behind the house. Ryan and 2 troopers rushed toward it, boots crunching through snow. Near the fuel shed, a man in a heavy parka was loading crates into a pickup. Sheriff's Department, Ryan shouted. Hands where I can see them. The man froze, then bolted toward the tree line. Ryan sprinted after him, lungs burning in the cold. Snow kicked up in white sprays under his boots. He tackled the man halfway to the fence. When they rolled over, Ryan yanked down his hood and froze. It wasn't Victor Ames. It was one of his site foremen, Mark Ellison. Mark's lip was split, his eyes darting like a trapped animal's. You don't understand. He's gonna kill me. Who? Ryan barked. Ames? Mark nodded frantically. He's clearing it all out. Said they're moving the kids before daylight. He's already gone. Ryan's stomach dropped. Where? Somewhere near Dickinson. An old storage depot, off Highway 94. Exit 7. He radioed Carla. We've got a secondary site. Ames is transporting minors. We need state police intercept now. Carla's voice crackled back. Copy that. Sending alert statewide. Lucy appeared beside him, clutching her scarf against the wind. If he's moving them, he's desperate. You corner a man like Victor, he'll torch everything, including people. Ryan's jaw set. Then we don't give him the chance. By mid-morning, they'd left the farm behind, convoy lights cutting through sheets of blowing snow. Ryan drove point, Lucy in the passenger seat. She'd brought Maddie's file from the hospital, A small folder marked Carter Madeline, Pediatric Ward Intake. "She keeps asking for her mother," Lucy said quietly. "She still thinks Joanna's out there." Ryan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Then let's make that true." When they reached the storage depot, the place looked dead. Rows of steel units under a crust of ice. A single pickup idled near the back gate. Carla's voice came through his radio. "We have visual. No movement yet." Ryan stepped out, hand on his holster. "Ames!" he shouted. His voice bounced off the steel walls, swallowed by wind. "It's over!" For a moment, nothing. Then a door slammed. Ames stepped from between two units, coat whipping in the wind, phone in hand. "You've overreached, officer. I have a court order. Temporary protective custody for the girl." He held out a sheet of paper, edges flapping. Lucy took one look and went pale. "That's a forgery." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "You sure?" The clerk's stamp, wrong date, wrong ink, and look at the signature. "The judge retired last year." Ryan pulled his radio. "Get me Judge Keller on the line, now." Minutes later, the judge's weary voice answered over speaker. "That document's fraudulent. Stand down and detain Ames immediately." Ames's smile cracked, his composure breaking. "You think you can stop this machine, Adler? You're a pawn. You'll drown in the paperwork before you touch me." Ryan stepped closer, snow swirling around them. "Maybe, but not before I make sure she never has to hide in a gas station again." Ames lunged, but the troopers were faster. Within seconds, he was face down in the snow, wrists cuffed. The wind howled louder, as if to bury his shouts. Ryan turned to Lucy. "Let's go get Maddie." That evening, back at Prairie Children's Ward, the child sat by the window, watching the snow fall. The blue scarf was clean now, drying on the heater. When Ryan entered, she looked up and smiled. Small, hesitant, but real. "Is the bad man gone?" she asked. Ryan knelt beside her. "He won't hurt anyone again." She touched the scarf, tracing her name in the thread. "Mom will come now," she whispered. Ryan hesitated, then said, "We're still looking, Maddie, but I promise we won't stop." Outside, the snow eased, leaving the world hushed and white. For the first time in days, Ryan felt the cold lift from his chest. He didn't notice Lucy watching from the doorway, her expression soft and tired. "Storm's breaking," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. "Yeah, maybe it finally is." The snow hadn't stopped, but it had gentled, falling in thin, steady veils instead of the howling sheets from the night before. Inside Prairie Children's Ward, the world felt smaller, quieter. The fluorescent hum of hallway lights, the rhythmic hiss of oxygen valves, the clink of a nurse's cart, all of it folded around Maddie like the soft edges of a dream. She sat up in bed, the blue scarf wrapped loosely around her neck now. Nurse Lucy checked her vitals and smiled faintly. "No more frost nip. You're tougher than you look, kiddo." Maddie traced a finger along the scarf's stitches. "My mom made it." Lucy's hand paused. "She did?" Maddie nodded. "She said it was our secret sign. Blue for sky, because we'd always find each other under the same one." Lucy swallowed. "That's a beautiful thing to promise." Across the hall, Officer Ryan Adler was fighting fatigue and paperwork in equal measure. Ames's arrest had cracked the case open. Troopers had recovered the missing ledgers, dozens of fake invoices, even a few property titles tied to hidden accounts. But Joanna Carter was still missing, and the news stations were already circling. Detective Carlin Gwynn leaned against the doorframe, holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. Ames's lawyer's already on TV saying his client's being framed by a rogue cop and a disgruntled nurse. Guess who that is? Ryan rubbed a hand over his jaw. They're trying to muddy the chain of custody. Typical. They'll succeed unless we find the missing piece, something that ties Ames directly to Carter's disappearance. He looked toward Maddie's room. Her mother's out there. She hid the SD card. She planned ahead. Maybe she left more. Carla nodded. I've got forensics combing through Ames's truck. You might want to talk to that nurse again. Lucy Hart? She's holding back something. You can see it. Ryan didn't answer, but his gaze flicked toward Lucy's silhouette through the blinds, standing by the bed, smoothing Maddie's blanket with careful hands. He knocked softly before stepping in. "You should get some rest." Lucy glanced over. "I could say the same to you. Detective thinks you might have something else, anything that didn't make it into the thumb drive." She hesitated. "There was one more thing. I didn't know if it mattered." Ryan waited. Lucy took out a folded printout from her pocket. An email chain, yellowed at the edges, dated a month before Joanna Carter vanished. It read, "Payment cleared. File transfer complete. Ensure silence on the Carter claim. Meet at facility. Storage unit B14. The sender's domain matched Ames Holdings. The recipient, elart@amesinc.com." Ryan's brow furrowed. "He looped you in?" "I was still working there," Lucy said quietly. "I didn't know what it was until later. I think they met her that day." Ryan felt the cold slide back under his ribs. "Then we start there. B14. Storage depot by Highway 94. He turned to go, but Maddie's voice stopped him. "You'll find her, right?" He looked back. The child's eyes were wide, fragile but steady, the kind that believed people kept promises. "I will," he said. "I don't break those." An hour later, the wind picked up again. Ryan and Carla stood before the same row of storage units where Ames had been arrested. Only now, crime scene tape fluttered between the doors. Unit B14 was padlocked, sealed under frost. Carla jimmied the key the property manager had given them. The lock cracked open. Inside, dust, old tarps, a single overturned chair, and a faint smell of oil and paper. Ryan's flashlight passed over the walls, bare metal, and then caught a shape in the corner. A filing cabinet, dented, locked. Carla crouched, prying it open with a crowbar. The drawers groaned. Inside, hard drives, ledger books, and, wrapped in waxed paper, a manila envelope. Ryan opened it carefully. Photographs spilled into his gloved hand. Road construction sites, equipment, stamped documents bearing Carter Engineering, LLC. And in the last photo, Joanna Carter herself, standing near a bridge piling, smiling in a hard hat. The timestamp, 2 days before she vanished. But one photo stopped him cold. The background wasn't a bridge. It was the grain farm, the same silo where they'd found the cot. Carla's breath caught. She was there. Ryan's phone buzzed. A message from dispatch. Hospital calling. Urgent. He answered. Lucy's voice came through, tight, breathless. "Ryan, he's here." "What?" "A man showed up with papers. Claims to be with Child Protective Services. Says he's taking Maddie into foster custody pending review. He's got a badge, but..." "But what?" Her voice dropped. "The stamp's wrong. Same forgery pattern as before." Ryan's heart jolted. "Lucy, lock that door and stay inside. I'm 5 minutes out." He grabbed his coat, motioning to Carla. Ames had help. Someone inside the system. Carla's jaw set. "We're not losing her now." They tore back toward the hospital, siren wailing, blue lights flashing across the snow. The world blurred into motion. White, red, blue, the pulse of something closing in. At Prairie Children's Ward, Lucy had barricaded the door with a supply cart. The man in the CPS jacket stood outside, knocking calmly. "Ma'am, you're obstructing a lawful transfer order," he said, voice flat, rehearsed. Inside, Lucy held Maddie's shoulders, whispering, "Don't move, honey. He's not who he says he is." The girl's eyes glistened. "He has a badge." "I know," Lucy said. "So did the last one who hurt your mom." Footsteps thundered up the hall. Then Ryan's voice cut through, deep, steady, unshakable. "Step away from that door." The man turned, startled, just as Carla drew her weapon. "Hands where we can see them." For a second, the imposter hesitated. Then he ran. Ryan gave chase through the corridor, boots pounding tile. The man burst into the stairwell, pushing through the emergency door into the parking lot. Ryan tackled him by the cruiser, cuffing him face down in the slush. The man's ID hit the ground. Fake. His radio, though, was real. Still on. Through the static came a voice Ryan knew instantly. Ames. "You think the girl saves you, Adler? You'll choke on her mother's secret before this is over." Ryan's grip tightened on the radio. "You're in custody, Victor. Where are you calling from?" A laugh crackled through. "You'll find out when the snow melts." Then, silence. Ryan looked up toward the hospital windows where Maddie pressed her small hand against the glass. The blue scarf glowed faintly in the fluorescent light, and for the first time, Ryan realized they weren't done, not even close. The blizzard thickened overnight, smearing the town into shades of white and shadow. Every road in and out of Bismarck was half buried by dawn, as if the entire prairie were trying to bury what had happened. Ryan sat in his unmarked cruiser outside the hospital, the engine idling for heat. His reflection in the windshield looked as worn as the badge clipped to his chest. Next to him lay the blue scarf again, cleaned, frayed, and quietly alive with memory. The fake CPS officer hadn't talked. No ID, no fingerprints in the system. Ames's network ran deeper than anyone had thought. Carla appeared beside the car, breath clouding. "State police ran facial rec. He's ex-security from Ames Construction. Disappeared from payroll 6 months ago. He's your middleman." Ryan nodded. "Means Ames still has people on the outside. We've got a live network." She handed him a folder. "DA's building a RICO case, but without Joanna Carter's body, or her testimony, it's all circumstantial, unless we find proof she's alive." Ryan turned toward the hospital lights. "Then we start with Maddie again. She saw more than she remembers." Inside, Maddie was coloring quietly at a small table near the window. Lucy sat across from her, hair pulled back, her hands folded on the table as if she were guarding a flame from the wind. Ryan crouched beside them. "Hey, kiddo, mind if I ask a few more questions?" Maddie nodded, wary but trusting now. He laid out 2 photos from the storage unit, the one of the bridge site and the one at the grain farm. "Do you know this place?" She stared at the second photo. Her hand hovered over it. "That's where the man yelled at Mommy." Ryan's heart knocked against his ribs. "You were there?" She nodded slowly. "Mommy told me to hide behind the red barrels. She said if I heard the truck doors slam twice, I should run." Lucy leaned in. "Do you remember hearing that sound?" The girl's brow furrowed. "Once, then a bang, and Mommy screamed." Ryan swallowed. "You're doing great, Maddie. Anything else you remember? Smells? Sounds? Anything small?" She hesitated. "There was a noise, like birds, but not birds, a hum." Ryan frowned. "A hum?" Lucy's eyes flicked toward him. "Generator. She's describing a backup generator." Ryan's mind started piecing it together. The old photos of Ames's rural sites, the power lines looping through farmland. He must have had another property with an active generator, something big enough to mask engine noise. Carla stepped in through the doorway. "We cross-check utility usage records. We can find it." Lucy stood. "I can help. Ames kept a secondary billing system, a side ledger for remote fuel deliveries. It's not public, but I can recreate it from memory." Ryan looked at her. "You sure?" She smiled faintly. "Numbers were always my thing, and I owe that little girl a childhood." By noon, the team gathered around a map in the precinct's conference room. Carla tapped her pen against a circled point west of town. "Here, a decommissioned grain elevator leased through a shell corp, still showing consistent power draw every month. Out in Dunn County." Ryan leaned closer. "Same pattern as the farm site, and it's within driving distance of where Joanna disappeared." He grabbed his coat. "Let's move." The roads out west were narrow ribbons through miles of white emptiness. The sun was pale, a weak fire behind gauze. Lucy sat in the back seat, laptop open, tracing fuel logs. "There," she said. "The same subcontractor delivered to both the farm and this site. just before each inspection audit. Ryan's jaw tightened. Cover operation. They moved evidence before every check. As they neared the coordinates, the outline of an industrial silo emerged. Tall, skeletal, surrounded by drifts taller than the cruiser. A windmill spun slowly, its creak lost in the gale. Ryan parked a quarter-mile away. We go in quiet. They trudged through snow up to their knees, breath ragged, boots sinking into the crust. The door to the main structure was padlocked, but Lucy pointed to a smaller maintenance hatch on the side. Old emergency exit. He used the same design on every site. Carla pried it open with her crowbar. Inside, the air was metallic and stale. The flashlight beams caught steel walls, crates, and a narrow hallway sloping downward. Ryan led the way, hand on his weapon. The hum Maddie had described filled the silence. Low, electrical, constant. At the bottom they found another door. Thick, reinforced, with a keypad entry. Lucy stepped forward. He reused passwords between sites. Try this. The door clicked. Inside was a small office. Desk, filing cabinets, 2 computer monitors still glowing with static. But it was what sat on the desk that froze Ryan where he stood. A photograph in a cheap frame. Joanna Carter. Older than in the last photo, but alive. Next to it, a USB drive taped beneath a note. If you're reading this, I didn't make it out. Protect Maddie. Ryan's chest constricted. Lucy, he said softly, copy everything on these drives. Every byte. She plugged in her laptop, fingers trembling as data scrolled across the screen. Encrypted backups of Ames's accounts? Holy hell. He wasn't just defrauding the state, he was laundering whistleblower settlements. Carla swept her flashlight across the room. And using hostages as leverage. Then, from deeper in the hallway, came a sound. A faint cry. Ryan froze. He motioned for silence, drawing his gun again. The sound came again. Muffled, weak, but unmistakably human. They followed it to a narrow door in the back wall. Ryan kicked it open. A storage chamber, dimly lit by a single bulb. Inside, blankets piled in a corner, and under them, a woman, frail, pale, eyes half open. Lucy gasped. Oh my God! Ryan dropped to his knees beside her. Joanna Carter? The woman's lips trembled. Maddie? She's safe, he said, voice breaking with relief. Your daughter's safe. Her eyes filled with tears. He said no one would ever find me. Well, Ryan said, his voice steadier now, he was wrong. As he lifted her into his arms, the scarf slipped from his pocket, blue against gray concrete, and Joanna's gaze caught it. She reached out weakly, brushing the fabric. My mother made that for her, she whispered. It means she's still got a home to come back to. Ryan nodded, carrying her toward the light. Behind them, the hum of the generator faltered, flickered, then died, as if the secret itself had finally run out of power. Snow began to fall again, but softer now, as if the sky itself exhaled. The rescue team's headlights carved tunnels of light through the white curtain as they carried Joanna Carter from the silo. Her skin was cold, her pulse weak but steady. Lucy rode in the back of the ambulance, holding Joanna's trembling hand, while Ryan followed behind in his cruiser, silent, alert, every nerve still burning from what they'd found. At Prairie General, the ER swung into motion. Nurses peeled away blankets, monitors came alive with beeps and green lines, and warmth filled the room like mercy. Joanna flinched at the overhead lights, her voice cracked. Where's my daughter? Ryan stepped closer. She's here, Joanna, safe. We found her 3 days ago. Her gaze darted toward him, suspicious at first, then softening. 3 days. She made it? She did, Ryan said quietly, because you told her to hide. Tears pooled at the corners of her eyes, tracing down skin drawn thin by cold. She remembered. She did more than that, Lucy said from the doorway. She helped us find you. Joanna turned her head, focusing on the nurse. You worked for him. Lucy didn't flinch. I did, and I should have seen what he was doing sooner. Joanna's eyes softened with fatigue. You saw now. That's what counts. Ryan stood at the foot of the bed, hands in his jacket pockets, watching the monitors steady. The girl's scarf sat folded on a chair beside her, the threadbare blue against the white hospital linen. For the first time, the symbol felt whole. 2 hours later, Maddie was led down the corridor by a social worker, her hand small and determined in Lucy's. The moment she saw her mother through the glass, she froze. Joanna turned her head weakly, and for a heartbeat, both of them seemed afraid to believe. Then the girl ran. The nurse barely had time to open the door before Maddie flew into the room, clambering onto the bed, burying her face against her mother's chest. "Mommy." Joanna's arms wrapped around her so tightly it seemed impossible she'd ever let go again. She breathed into the child's hair, her voice breaking between sobs and laughter. "I told you we'd find the same sky, didn't I?" Maddie nodded, pressing the scarf into her mother's hands. "I kept it warm." Ryan turned away, jaw tight. Carla, standing beside him in the hall, murmured, "If you don't feel that in your bones, you don't have a pulse." He managed a small smile. "Let's make sure it lasts." 3 days later, the state investigation widened. The data Lucy had recovered from the silo's drives was damning. Offshore transfers, falsified contracts, and records of hush payments to officials. The Attorney General's office called it the largest infrastructure fraud in North Dakota history. Victor Ames now sat in a holding cell awaiting federal indictment, though his smirk in the booking photo hadn't faded. "He still thinks he'll beat it," Carla said, tossing the paper onto Ryan's desk. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Maybe, but he can't bury this one. We've got every ledger, every email, and the woman he swore would never talk." A knock came at the door. Lucy stepped in, bundled in her coat, holding a folder. "Joanna's stable. She gave a full statement. She wants to testify." Ryan looked up. "You sure she's ready?" "She said something you'd appreciate," Lucy replied. "When you've lived in the dark long enough, even fear starts to look like light." Ryan nodded slowly. "That's strength." "She asked for you to come by before she heads to protective housing," Lucy added. He hesitated. "How's Maddie holding up?" Lucy smiled faintly. "She's coloring again. She drew a picture of you, actually." He arched a brow. "Me?" Lucy pulled a folded paper from her pocket and handed it over. Crayon on construction paper. A stick figure with a police badge, standing under a blue sky, holding hands with a smaller figure in a scarf. Above them, written in uneven letters, "Safe now." Ryan stared at it for a long time before setting it carefully back in the folder. When he visited Joanna later that afternoon, the room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of her breathing. She looked stronger now, color returning to her cheeks. "You found her," she said as he entered. "You kept your word." He shook his head. "She found you. I just followed her lead." A smile flickered at the corner of her mouth. "She's always been the brave one." He nodded toward the scarf resting on the bedside table. "That thing's been through more than any of us." Joanna touched it gently, her fingers tracing the frayed edge. "My mother made it for me, Toy. I gave it to Maddie before everything went wrong. I told her if we ever got separated, she should hold on to it until she saw me again." Ryan said softly, "It worked." "Sometimes," she whispered. "That's all a mother can do. Send hope ahead, wrapped in something warm." He didn't trust his voice enough to answer. When he stepped back into the hallway, Carla was waiting with her phone. Judge Keller just issued emergency guardianship paperwork. Lucy Hart's being appointed Maddie's temporary guardian until Joanna's recovery and trial testimony. Ryan blinked. "Lucy?" Joanna insisted. Said the woman who risked everything to expose the truth deserves a second chance, too. Outside, snow fell again. Fine, silver, unending. The kind that erased footprints within minutes. But inside the hospital, the air felt warmer. Ryan paused by the pediatric wing window. Through the glass, Maddie was laughing as Lucy taught her to knit. The blue scarf lay across her lap, its frayed edge threaded through with new yarn. Stitch by stitch, the tear was closing. Ryan smiled quietly. She's learning to mend. Carla followed his gaze. So are we all. And, for the first time in weeks, Ryan felt that maybe, just maybe, the storm was starting to clear for good. By the time the courthouse reopened that Monday, the snowdrifts along Main Avenue had hardened into glassy banks, glowing faintly under a weak sun. The media had already gathered, vans parked haphazardly, lenses glittering like watchful eyes. Inside, the air was taut with the anticipation of a story that had outgrown Bismarck's borders. Officer Ryan Adler stood beside the elevator, his tie crooked. Coffee long cold. Across the hall, Lucy helped Joanna adjust her coat, the blue scarf wrapped around Maddie's small shoulders. The child clutched a stuffed otter the hospital counselor had given her, the toy's stitched smile echoing a kind of stubborn hope. "Remember," Lucy whispered to Joanna, "you're not alone in there." Joanna nodded, pale but steady. "For 2 years, I thought no one would ever believe me. That's more terrifying than being locked away." Ryan glanced at the glass doors of a courtroom 3A. "They'll believe you now." She met his eyes. "Only because you didn't stop digging." He wanted to say, "You gave me something worth digging for," but the bailiff called her name before he could. The courtroom buzzed faintly as the judge entered. Reporters' pens scratched, cameras clicked outside in the hallway. Ames sat at the defense table, clean-shaven, calm, wearing a dark suit that looked borrowed from a world where consequences didn't exist. His lawyer leaned close, whispering, but Ames didn't move. He only turned once, to glance toward Maddie and her mother, and smiled. Joanna froze. The tremor that started in her hands moved through her whole body until Lucy reached out, steadying her. "He doesn't get to own your fear anymore," Lucy whispered. Joanna straightened. When she took the stand, her voice was quiet at first, the kind that made people lean forward to listen. She told them everything. How Ames had threatened her after she uncovered falsified safety records, how he'd lured her to the farm on the promise of settlement paperwork, how she'd heard her daughter's scream before the metal door slammed. "He told me no one would come looking," she said. "He said I'd be a ghost before anyone cared." The prosecutor, a measured woman named Claire Benton, nodded gently. "And yet, you survived. How?" Joanna looked toward Lucy, then Ryan. "Because someone did care, and because my daughter never stopped believing the sky would lead me home." The courtroom went still. Even the hum of the heaters seemed to quiet. Ames's attorney rose, his tone clipped. "Ms. Carter, are you suggesting my client kidnapped you personally?" Joanna's gaze sharpened. "He signed every fuel invoice that led to those sites. You think that's an accident?" Ryan felt something surge through him then. Pride, maybe, or the deep ache that comes when justice finally finds its voice. At recess, they gathered in the courthouse cafeteria. Ryan, Lucy, and Carla sitting across from Joanna and Maddie. Reporters pressed at the glass beyond the security line, cameras flashing against the winter glare. Maddie swung her legs under the bench, the scarf draped around her. "Mom said the scarf's like a promise." Ryan smiled. "Seems to keep its word." The girl grinned shyly. "Lucy's teaching me to knit another one, for people who don't have any." Lucy chuckled softly. "She's decided we're starting a project for the shelter. Sky scarves, she calls it." Joanna leaned back, eyes glistening. "You see why I fought so hard." Ryan nodded quietly. "Yeah, I do now." He checked his phone. Carla had just texted, "Fed warrant approved. Full seizure of Ames's properties. They're raiding the accounts now." He looked back at Joanna. "When this is over, you'll have a clean start. The DA's arranging restitution, and the state wants to offer you a consulting role for infrastructure ethics." Her lips curved faintly. "Strange, isn't it? The same system that tried to silence me is asking for my help." "That's what justice looks like when it's done right," Lucy said. "Messy, imperfect, but real." Maddie tilted her head. Does that mean it's over now? Ryan hesitated. Almost, kiddo. Because he knew men like Ames didn't surrender quietly. Later that afternoon, as the wind picked up again, Ryan stepped outside the courthouse to take a call from dispatch. His breath fogged the air. Adler, you should hear this, the deputy said. One of Ames's trucks was spotted leaving a storage site near the state line. Cargo unlisted, driver using a fake manifest. Ryan's muscles tensed. Where's it heading? Into Montana. Probably another drop site. He glanced back through the courthouse glass, Joanna giving her statement to the press, Lucy holding Maddie's coat. Safe, for now. Send troopers after it, he said. I'll coordinate from here. As he hung up, a gust of snow swept through the square. Something fluttered against his boot, a torn piece of fabric caught in the wind, blue thread unraveling. Ryan bent to pick it up. The edge had the same embroidery pattern as Maddie's scarf, but this one, it was newer. He stared at it for a long moment, the unease settling deep in his chest. If Ames had accomplices still moving shipments, the story wasn't finished. That night, long after the courthouse emptied, Ryan drove out to the riverfront. He parked by the frozen water, headlights off, the town's faint glow behind him. The blue scrap of thread sat in his palm. He thought about Maddie's drawing, safe now, about Joanna's testimony, Lucy's quiet courage, and the storm that had followed them all. He'd seen justice done before, but not like this, not carried by a child's scarf and a mother's promise. The radio crackled suddenly. Carla's voice. Ryan, you still awake? Barely. Lab just confirmed something. The partial print on that forged CPS order, it matches one of Ames's county partners. The case isn't over. It's widening. Ryan looked toward the horizon, where the night bled faintly blue with the coming dawn. Then we keep going, he said, until the sky's clear for all of them. The radio went silent. Snow hissed softly against the windshield, and Ryan sat there a while longer, the fabric warm in his hand despite the cold. A reminder that some promises, once made, don't fade even when everything else does. The morning light over Bismarck looked like something reborn, silver brushing the frozen river, rooftops glittering with frost. But beneath that calm veneer, the storm hadn't ended. It had only gone underground. Ryan leaned over the evidence board in the precinct's war room. The wall was dense with photos, invoices, and maps. Ames's empire, pinned by thread like a spider web being dissected. But new lines had been added overnight, stretching far beyond Stark and Dunn counties. Carla set down her coffee beside him. We traced the truck that crossed into Montana. It wasn't carrying fuel. It was moving drives, encrypted archives, backups of Ames's offshore accounts. Whoever's driving knows what they're doing. Who's funding it? Ryan asked. She handed him a file. You're not going to like this. Victor Ames wasn't the top. There's a holding trust tied to a name we've seen before. Ryan scanned the page. His stomach tightened. Russell Dane. Carla nodded grimly. Oil field billionaire. Ames's original investor. Owns half the highway reconstruction contracts in the Dakotas. If he's been underwriting this operation, we're staring at federal-level conspiracy. Ryan stepped back, staring at the map. And Joanna Carter's lawsuit would have exposed it all. She was the first domino, Carla said. Ames was just the cleanup man. Ryan exhaled. Then we go after Dane next. Carla hesitated. Careful. He's powerful enough to make people disappear without firing a shot. You'll need someone airtight on the financial end. Ryan's gaze lifted to the window overlooking the parking lot, where Lucy's Subaru had just pulled in. I know who. In the conference room, Lucy sat across from them, flipping through Dane's public filings. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, the glow of her screen painting the lines under her eyes. He hid the shell companies under subsidiary grant programs. Same accounting structure Ames used. Same formatting quirks, even down to double-space entries. This isn't just a partner. This is the architect. Ryan leaned in. You can prove it? Given 48 hours, yes. You've got 24, he said. She smirked faintly. You sound like him, you know. Ames. Only difference is, you mean well. Ryan cracked a tired grin. I'll take that as progress. That evening, Lucy worked from the hospital cafeteria. She refused to leave Maddie's side for long, keeping her laptop open on the table while the child knitted beside her. The new scarf was longer now, bright blue like the sky after snow. Every so often, Maddie looked up and asked, "Is Mommy coming soon?" Lucy would smile gently. "She's helping fix the world right now, but she'll be back." Maddie would nod, threading another loop. "Then I'll keep making this bigger, for both of us." When Ryan stopped by, Lucy looked up from the screen, her face pale but triumphant. "Got him." "Show me." She turned the laptop around. Dane's trust issued quarterly payments labeled Soil Restoration Projects, but the routing numbers match the offshore accounts Ames used. It's fraud, laundered through federal infrastructure grants. I've got timestamps, email trails, everything. Ryan scanned the data, pulse quickening. If this holds, Dane's finished. It holds, Lucy said. But he'll know we're coming. He has access to every contractor under him. Ryan's phone buzzed then, an unknown number. He frowned and answered. "Adler." A voice came through, deep and smooth. "You're digging in dangerous soil, officer. You've done your job. Let it go." "Mr. Dane," Ryan said flatly. Silence, then a chuckle. "You've got gall, I'll give you that. But you don't understand what happens when people like you start thinking the system can actually be clean." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then maybe it's time you found out what happens when it can." "Funny," Dane said. "I was just thinking the same." The line went dead. Lucy's face drained of color. "He knows my name now." Ryan pocketed his phone. "Then you don't go home tonight. You stay under protection, both of you." "Both of us?" He looked toward Maddie. "Her too. If Dane's desperate, he won't stop at intimidation." That night, Ryan drove them both to a safe house outside Mandan, a modest farmhouse belonging to a retired state trooper. The walls were thick, the windows boarded against the wind. Lucy tucked Maddie into the guest room, the scarf laid across her blanket like a guardrail against nightmares. When she came back to the kitchen, Ryan was at the table with maps spread out and coffee going cold. She sat opposite him, rubbing her arms. "Do you ever stop?" "Not until it's over," he said quietly. "And when is that?" He didn't answer. His eyes were on the scarf through the cracked door, its threads catching a sliver of moonlight. "When people like her don't have to be brave anymore." For a while, they just sat there listening to the wind whistle through the eaves. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, shared, necessary. Finally, Lucy spoke. "There's something I didn't tell you. The drives. One of them wasn't from Ames's site. It was newer. Encrypted under a name, Harbor Light." Ryan frowned. "Meaning?" "It's a fund Dane runs through his foundation. Supposed to support widows of construction workers killed on the job, but the transactions link straight back to black accounts. Bribes, payouts, gag settlements." Ryan leaned back. "Then Harbor Light isn't charity. It's cover." Lucy nodded. "He's laundering guilt and calling it mercy." Ryan's expression hardened. "Then that's where we'll sink him." At dawn, the snow stopped. The farmhouse glowed faintly with amber light. Maddie stirred, whispering in her sleep, clutching the scarf tighter. Outside, Ryan stood on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. Carla's voice crackled through. "Federal agents are on their way. If we can tie Dane to the Harbor Light accounts, we'll have the leverage for arrest." He watched the horizon bloom pale pink over the frost. "Then today's the day." Carla hesitated. "Be careful. Men like Dane don't fall. They explode." Ryan's eyes followed a hawk circling above the frozen fields. "Then we stand far enough back to watch him burn." Behind him, Lucy appeared in the doorway, a blanket draped over her shoulders. "You sound like someone who doesn't plan to make it home." He half smiled. "Depends how you define home." She stepped closer. You don't have to carry all of it alone. He looked at her then, really looked, and something shifted behind his tired eyes. Neither do you. The two of them stood there a moment, the cold air biting, the quiet deep enough to hear the small creak of the house settling. Inside, Maddie stirred awake, looked out to the window, and saw the two silhouettes on the porch, steady, unmoving, framed by pale dawn. She smiled faintly and whispered to the scarf, "They'll keep the sky safe for us." And, for the first time since the night she was found, she believed it. The convoy rolled through the frozen plains just after sunrise. 3 black SUVs cutting across a world of white silence. The lead car carried U.S. Marshals, the second, Agent Claire Benton from the Attorney General's office. Ryan drove the third, Lucy beside him, laptop balanced on her knees. The coordinates led to a private compound near Lake Sakakawea, Russell Dane's northern estate. From the air, it looked like a mansion, but on the ground it was a fortress. Solar arrays glinted off steel roofing. Security gates hummed with hidden voltage. Lucy zoomed in on her laptop feed. Harbor Light Foundation HQ, or that's what the plaque says. I'm tracing the accounts in real time. He's transferring assets. Fast. Ryan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He's cleaning house. Not if I burn it first, Lucy murmured. Behind them, the trooper's sirens stayed low, just a thrum beneath the wind. The marshals moved in formation as they approached the gate. Claire stepped out first, her breath fogging the air. "Federal warrant for search and seizure," she called, her voice crisp as the frost. "Russell Dane, come to the door." No movement, only the creak of snow under boots. Ryan's instincts prickled. "He's stalling." Lucy tapped her keyboard. "Got it. Remote firewall just went live. He's purging servers from inside." "Then we move," Ryan said. The marshals breached. The steel gate split open with a shuddering groan. They flooded into the courtyard, weapons drawn. Inside the estate, everything gleamed. Glass, chrome, sterile light. Too clean for a man with mud on his conscience. Dane stood at the end of the hall, hands clasped behind his back, perfectly calm. "Officer Adler," he said, "you've come a long way to ruin a man's reputation." Ryan stopped 10 feet away. "You ruined your own." Dane smiled faintly. "Do you know what separates men like me from men like you? I build systems. You break them." "Sometimes they need breaking," Ryan said. Dane nodded toward Lucy. "And you brought my accountant's pet project, the one who thinks morality and math can coexist." Lucy stepped forward, chin lifted. "Funny. I thought you'd be taller." Dane's smile twitched. "What exactly do you think you've proven, Ms. Hart? That a few clerical errors can take down a billion-dollar enterprise?" Ryan dropped a stack of printed records on the marble floor. Wire logs, shell accounts, photographs from the grain farms. They scattered like falling snow. "No, Dane. That your entire empire was built on people you buried." Dane's composure cracked. "You think the courts will touch me? I fund half their campaigns." Lucy clicked a key on her laptop. "Not anymore." The main monitor on the wall flickered to life. Lines of code streamed across the screen. Every offshore account, every falsified payment, every backdoor fund labeled Harbor Light. The files uploaded live to the DOJ's encrypted server. Dane's face drained of color. "You wouldn't." Ryan's voice cut in, low and final. "She already did." The marshals moved in. Dane resisted only long enough for the cuffs to click shut. "You'll drown in paperwork before I ever see a cell," he hissed. Ryan leaned close. "Maybe, but you'll spend every day watching the sky get smaller." They let him out, his polished shoes slipping on the frost. By the time the sun rose higher, the estate was swarming with agents. Lucy stepped outside, the cold biting her cheeks, exhaustion written deep into her eyes. Ryan stood by the SUV, arms crossed. She exhaled. "It's done. The accounts are frozen. The foundation's been dissolved." Ryan gave a tired nod. Then it's finally over. A smile ghosted across her face. You say that like you don't quite believe it. I've seen too many endings that weren't. Lucy followed his gaze. Out past the hills, the lake stretched silver and still. Then maybe this one's a beginning. A week later, snow melted off the streets of Bismarck, leaving behind puddles that reflected the pale spring sky. At Prairie Children's Ward, the pediatric lounge smelled of cocoa and wool. Maddie sat cross-legged on the floor beside Joanna, finishing the last row on her new scarf. The same shade of blue as before, but longer now. Stronger, every stitch even. Lucy entered quietly, carrying a small paper bag. New knitting needles, she said, so you can teach the others at the shelter. Maddie's eyes brightened. Can I call it sky scarves? Lucy smiled. I think that's perfect. Joanna's gaze met Ryan's across the room. You kept your promise, she said softly. He shook his head. You and your daughter did all the hard parts. No, Joanna said, her voice firm but kind. You listened when no one else did. That's the difference. Ryan looked away, embarrassed by the warmth in her tone. What happens next? The trial will drag on, Joanna said. But Maddie and I are moving east for now. My firm offered remote work until it's over. Lucy leaned on the doorway. And you? She asked Ryan. He looked toward the window, where the last of the snow was dissolving into sunlight. Probably back to patrol. Paperwork never ends. Joanna smiled faintly. Maybe not, but neither does good. Maddie wrapped the finished scarf around her neck and climbed into Ryan's lap without hesitation. You can have this one, she said, so you don't forget. He looked down at the fabric, the stitches uneven in the places where small hands had tried their best. I won't. The scarf felt warm against his skin, not because of the yarn, but because of everything it carried. A girl who survived a winter no child should have. A mother who kept faith through silence. A woman who risked her life to make numbers tell the truth. And a promise stitched from sky and hope. Outside, the clouds parted. Light spilled across the snowmelt, bright and clean. Ryan watched the reflection shimmer on the floor and said quietly, almost to himself, looks like the storms finally learned how to end. And somewhere between the blue of the scarf and the sky beyond the window, the world began to feel safe again.